Hi everybody, we're going to have a look at site modeling today. So I've written this manual, this is available on my website. We covered this the other day. And we're going to look at the concept of site modeling. Now the first thing I think that we should cover is what is a site model? So what do we use it for? So the first thing is we can use it for visualization. One of the things I really use it for a lot is this height in relation to boundary or recession planes. Being able to visualize in 3D how your building should fit in its site and in relation to the requirements of the local building authority. We can use it for cut and fill calculations, but the big thing, let's understand how a site model is made. That allow us to understand what we can expect from a site model and what we can't expect. So if we have a look, the idea is that we need some 3D data to create a site model. So the first thing is that we need to look at where's my chat gone? Where's chat? I've got no chat at the moment. I'm going to have to carry on because I don't know how to fix the chat. We've got a viewer. Thank you very much for coming. I'm not sure how to get the chat enabled. I thought I did everything the same as I did last week, but it doesn't appear that my live chat is going. I'll just check. No, I can't see how to figure that out. So I'm sorry, I can't answer your questions at the moment, but let's have a look at the concept. So the idea of the site model is we take some 3D data. In this case, I've just got a sketch with 3D loci. Let's zoom in so you can see it more easily. So the idea is that this 3D data has the 3D coordinates. Vectorworks then looks at this data and creates a 3D polygon that joins those three dots together, or the 3D data. This is known as a triangulated integrated network, because what it does, it looks at all the points. And then it creates this network, and this is what creates your site model mesh. And the extent of the site model is limited by the 3D data that you give it. If you give it more data, then you should get better results within reason. If you're going to put in 1 million data points, or if you're going to use a site model, a cloud, if you're going to get your site scanned and get a point cloud, you end up with too much data. And Vectorworks is still going to do this, still going to do these triangles, but there's millions of them, and so it takes a while for it to calculate them. There's a limit to what you put in and what you can get out of a site model. Now, what Vectorworks expects is that between this 3D data and that 3D data is a straight line. And the way it calculates its contours is to say, well, if that's 10 feet and that's 20 feet, then 15 feet must be halfway along. And then it says that one's 10 feet and that one's 20 feet. So 15 feet must be halfway along that one. And then if this one was, for example, if that was 10 feet and that was 30 feet, well then halfway along it is going to be 20 feet. And so between that, so that's where 15 feet is. So you'll end up with a contour that goes from there to there and then comes to here. And so sometimes you end up with these very funny shaped contours, and it's really a result of how Vectorworks works through the mathematics of all these objects. So that's the background to the site modeling. Hey, if you want this manual, don't forget to become a member of my community. This manual is available there. So let's get into Vectorworks and we're going to have a look. So this is a 3D model I created. This is one of my site models. And you can see once you've got your site model, it's really cool because you can see things like the site area. Now the way I created the site area was I created something called a texture bed. And I applied a grass text to that texture bed so that when we show this to the client can easily see where their site is relative to the other parts. Now the other parts I really wanted as well because that gives me my context. I've got my houses around here. These are the surrounding buildings, and these surrounding buildings can be used to help generate solar studies so I can see where's the best place to put my building. If these were much bigger, they'd be casting bigger shadows across my site. So in this particular case, you can see I've also got planting. If you create a site model, when you put your plants in, they will automatically stick or lift themselves to the surface of the site model. So there's nothing you need to do to this to make the plants sit on the site model. If you don't create a site model, you can't do this. So site models are useful for that as well. We can use them for cut and fill calculations. Now I've got one here, I think, which is ready to go. Let's have a look. I think I've got a site model here. And there's my site model. And this site model has cuts in it that represent parts of the building. So you can see I've got some depressions here. I have a building. I have some soft landscaping. I've got hard landscaping. And I've got some roading in here as well. There's a road in there. And so these areas are cut into the site. And that allows me to calculate how much cut. And I can do cut and fill calculations on my site model. If I update my cut and fill calculations, you'll see I've got cubic meters, cut volume, fill volume. There's a lot of cut here to get the site down for this project. So those are the concepts that we've got. First of all, we're going to make sure that we put in good information. We're going to make sure the information is okay. We're going to look at different ways of creating the site model, and we're going to look at how we can control the graphics. So let's hide all of those, and we're going to start with 2D contours. So in this case, I've got some 2D contours of my project. So these are from I've traced over a PDF file to get my contours. So if you are doing site modeling, what are the sort of things can we do? So we have, let's start with a brand new blank file. So if we start with a blank file, we're going to bring in some information. I've got some information ready to bring in. So we have here a site scan. So we drag that in. Let's have a look at it. And it's just a site scan, a 2D site, or it's a PDF. And we'll notice that as a PDF, let's turn on snap to geometry. I can snap to that geometry. You can see the cursor snapping to that geometry. And that's because this particular site model, or this particular PDF, was made from Vectorworks. And so it's using vector graphics, not raster graphics. Now the first thing I have to do is to check to make sure that this is to scale. So we select that PDF, modify, scale objects, and I'm going to use symmetric by distance. So I'm going to start at this end and go to that point, and that should be 23 meters long. So now I know that's to scale. I can now go ahead and create my site model, or at least put in the data to make it. Now if you don't check the scale of that, you could create a site model which is totally wrong because it's not using the correct coordinates. So then what do we do? Well, there's a couple of things we can do. One thing we can do is to trace over with 2D polygons. So let's get our polygon tool, let's trace over, and I'm going to use this mode. So this is my contour line here. I can trace over that contour. Just hit the delete key if you make a mistake. And you can see, because I've got this with the graphics turned on, I can snap to contours along there. So I'm just going to create some of these. I'm just going to create a couple because I don't want to spend all morning or all afternoon drawing polygons. Now notice that I started at the lowest level contour for this trick. It's important you start at the lowest level contour. Let's just go through those and we'll have a look. And I've got another one to look at to see if there's a problem. So I've got 3 there, that should be enough. So one of the ways you've got is to trace over your scanned image, trace over a contour plan, or trace over a PDF, and then we're going to use the architectural thing. Now remember, I started at the lowest level contour and I went up using equal contour intervals. So each of these is a meter apart, 59 meters, 60 meters, 61 meters, and so on. So let's have a look. AEC, terrain, we want survey input to start with. Survey input 2D polys to 3D source data. So this will take the information we've got and convert it into a 3D form that will allow us to use it for site modeling. My start elevation was 59 meters. My contour interval was 1 meter. So this is the part where it's really important that you use the regular interval. If you did a half interval here, Vectorworks would want to lift that up to the next meter. If you want this to be in half meters or in 1 foot intervals, you've got to make sure that you draw them all at 1 foot intervals. I want to create 3D loci because they're really good at making a site model. Click OK. Now it started at this one, which is the wrong one. Let's have a look. That should be, so this, in this case here, we want that to go up to 61. Next. Now you can see it's just stopped at that point. Let's go back. Here. So let's select that one, and that one. And now let's do that again. So AEC, survey input, and 2D polys. So this was 59 meters, it was 1 meter apart, and we're going to create 3D loci. So let's start again. Now you can see this time it started at the lowest level contour because I had them selected. So that's great. Let's go to the next one. Yep, so that's 60, that was 61, good. Now you can see that it's actually going in turn, picking each one at the correct elevation and lifting it up to the correct elevation. If you don't draw them logically, starting at the lowest level contour, this becomes a total nightmare because you don't know which one is which, you lose track of where they are, they're jumping all over the place. And let's delete our original polylines. So what has that left us with? Let's just delete our scan because we don't need it. And you can see what it's left us with is a series of loci, these 3D loci, and we can use these. There they are. So we can use these to create our site model. I'm going to use my select similar tool. Let's select those objects. So it's selected 39 3D loci, and when I go AEC terrain and let's create a site model from source data, I get a dialog box, and these are my settings. So it's found my lowest contour elevation. Do check this. If you don't check this, it's so easy for this to end up as 0. You've accidentally made a mistake. So you've got a 0 contour somewhere or a 0 elevation. You've got to go and find it. So let's just make one of these 0. We'll see what happens. So let's do that again. So we go, okay, let's select all. Let's select all those objects. Yeah, we're really happy with that. We go, let's go source data. So there we are. Oh, there's a 0. Now, where's the 0 come from? It's come out of that 3D contour, that locus that I chose, and it's at the wrong elevation. How are we going to find that? So because when you look here, you can't see it. You could go around and you could click on each of these, I guess. So let's select all of those, or if not, we can just go to a front view. And I'd like to do this in orthogonal, because now you can see this one here down here, and that should be at 59 meters. So now when we select all of those and we go, I'm not going to save this file. So it was AEC, terrain, and site model from source data. Oh, so we've got it now. We've found the problem, and we can go ahead. Now I'm using metric at the moment. If you're using feet and inches, you can make this all appear in feet and inches. So here my contour interval is, I've got 200mm contour intervals, and so every meter is going to be a major. So if you were doing feet, you might do 1 foot between each minor contour, but every major is going to have every 5 is going to be a major. So every 5 feet would be a major contour. And the graphics you can change so that minor contours have got thin lines and major contours have got heavy lines. You can also change it so that major contours have the label and minor ones don't. So that's the first step here, is we've looked at our data, we're going to go ahead, we know what our contours want to be. In this case, I'm going to make it 250 millimeters, which is around about 10 inches, and every 4 is going to be a major. So again, I'm looking at putting every meter as a major contour. Now this is really good to get it to this point, but there's so much more we can do with site models. So one of the things I always do with my site models is to control the graphic properties. Now these graphic properties help you to control the graphic style of your major contours for existing, major contours for proposed, minor contour interval, minor contour graphics for existing, and minor contour graphics for proposed as well. So we can control both existing and proposed, major and minor, and if we put those on classes, then we can also turn the classes on and off. Let's edit that. Do we have a site model class? We don't, so we can create a new class for this. And we might have a class we can use. I'm going to go look for one. I haven't got one available on the screen at the moment, so I'm going to go and have a look for one and see what I can find. I'm just looking into a course to get my standards. Okay, so here are my standards, and I'm looking for something to do with site modeling. So I go SI, oh no, let's go back to here. So here I'm going to click in this area, I'm going to type in SI, and that should get me down to site quickly. So we got site, contours, existing major, existing minor, proposed. I'm going to import all of those. I'm not going to edit them, they're already set up. And now I'm just going to check to make sure which one I've got. So I want here, this is major existing. Let's choose existing major. And let's make all attributes by class. Then I can go to the next one, and I can choose the class that I want, which is site, contours. And this is proposed major. So proposed major ones, make attributes by class. And now these are existing minor contours. So existing minor, and I'm going to use class to control those as well. And the last one, site, contours, proposed minor. Okay, so that controls now the graphic style of my existing and proposed, my major and my minor contours. And you can see I've got some nice greens here, some of these are black. And if you want to make a change, you can make the change to the class, and that will update your site model. So that to me is a really good way of controlling the graphics. Now the other thing that makes it nice if you use classes on these components is that you can then control the classes in your viewports. So if you use class overrides in your viewports, you can then start to change the graphic style of your site model in a viewport to give it the look that you want. So it's really important that you start here with the end in mind, thinking about what's my end goal. Well, I want to create a drawing, and I want that drawing to have some graphics. So let's start using the classes now to get exactly what we're looking for. So we've got existing proposed. Let's go OK on that. So we're controlling our graphics. Our 2D display is going to be existing only. It can be proposed only. It can be existing plus proposed. The style will be, normally I use 2D contour smooth, but there are other options like the colored slopes if you want to describe the steepness of the slopes to somebody. We can have contour labels on major only. We can put them on majors and minors. I find that major only is quite good. Parallel to the topo line is quite nice to read. And then I've got custom label placement. I only want 4 labels per contour. And I don't want closer together than 3 meters. Now if you need to, you can show the flow arrows, which is really handy for some things. But if you want to do the flow arrows, let's go back to graphic properties. Let's have a look. There's 2D flow arrows. Why don't you put a class on these? And that way you can control the look of those flow arrows class by class in your viewports. 3D display, existing only, cut and fill calculations, no 3D. I'm going to use existing only for this one. The skirt is this, the side edges here. We've got those. Do you want 3D contours? Sometimes that helps. I don't always show that. For mesh smoothing, we want 60 degrees. And you'll notice that when we turn on mesh smoothing, the image here changes dramatically. And it shows a much smoother. Now, I'm not going to geo-image this text or geo-image texture this. I'm going to have a look here. Now, there's a lot we could go through here. And I could spend the rest of the session looking at how we deal with components. I'm just going to leave them alone. But what we are able to do is if we put components below the surface of the site model, we can have an area for grass, for example. We could have an area for topsoil. We could have an area for the substructure or the substrate. So we could put a lot of that information in. So here we are, we're ready to go. We've got the general settings, click OK, and that creates our site model. Now, I did talk to you about the triangulated integrated network and the way that Vectorworks tries to use these points to create the contours. And that's what's given us these wavy contours through here. Now, the only way to improve those is to add some more data points to try and smooth those out, but it's based on the triangulations. Now, if I change to a top view, and we're going to go to wireframe. There we are, wireframe view. So you can see here what Vectorworks has got. It's got some information here, but there's no more information until you get to this point. So let's look at this all orthogonal. And so Vectorworks is saying, okay, so halfway along here is one of those, halfway along here is the next one, halfway along here is the next one, and so on. And that's giving us the wavy lines through here. If we had more information in this area here, we could put that information in, and that would help to smooth it out. So we've created our site model, we've got the plan view, we've got some information, we've deleted our PDF, but let's say, for example, we had from the contractor, we found out that we needed some extra information. So let's go to our 3D modeling, let's get our contour here, and I want to go back to a top view, and I want to be in orthogonal and wireframe. Just using a keyboard shortcut to change to wireframe. Now if I click here, that'll create a 3D locus exactly at that point. So let's say, for example, we know that there's a series, there's an area through here where the survey didn't measure it properly, but we know it's flat through this area, and so what we really have is some points here. This one should be at 60.1 meters. So let's say we knew that information should be there. If we use our Move by Points tool, and we make some duplicates, we go, okay, so we know that that goes this way through here. How do we get this information into our site model? It's going to be the next question. So we've got that information. It's missing from our site model at the moment, but what we can do is we can cut that information, we can select it, we can go right click and we can go cut. Now I don't have that here on my right click because I know there's a keyboard shortcut. So I've grabbed that information, and now what I can do is I can edit the existing source data. So this is where it becomes really useful, where we're going to recreate from source data. And we're going to paste in place. Up here there's under edit, we've got paste in place. And so now I've got this new information here. So I can add information now. The only thing I've got to say about this is once you created your site model, do not move it. Cut and paste doesn't always work well if you start moving or rotating your site model. And you can see now, if we go back to a top view, we've got a changed site model. It's got the contours recalculated, and that's one of the tricks you can do with your site model if you want to make changes to it. So you can see it's quite of a flat area through here. Let's go back to a wireframe view. Can you see that? Maybe not as easy. So that's the concept of doing your site models. So let's have a look at a couple of examples. So let's get rid of that. I've got some things I'm going to import to have a go at it. So I've got a 2D DXF. So we import with the information from Surveyor. Let's have a look for it. Where has it gone? I've done my site scan, 2D. I'm just having a look for my 2D information. 2D DXF, there it is. That should. Oh, that's actually a Vectorworks file, so let's open with Vectorworks. Okay, what have we got? So this one's already been imported. Let's have a look, see what we've got. That's a polygon. We've got the ceiling. Let's have a look at our site plan. Now I was hoping this would have our 2D information in it. Now I do have, I think, some 3D information. There it is. So let's delete that. Let's go back to the first one we had. So we're ready to import the survey information. We've got some survey. We import it from the surveyor. Or if you're a landscaper, we're importing it from the architect. We don't know what the units are. So I'm going to use meters. Now I hope there's something on here that I can use to scale this, because it's really important once you import it that you actually scale it. So okay, it's imported successfully. That's a 2D symbol. And we've got this information here. Now when you do this import of your information for a site model, it's best if you start in a blank file, brand new blank file. Don't use your template, use a brand new blank file. Because what I need to do is I need to scale this information to make sure it's accurate. So again, we've got that size here. Let's just do I'm going to just check the scale. So I'm going to click. I'm not going to click. So I move to that point. I'm going to hit the G key. Now I could use this tool up here, the tape measure tool, and I could click there, and I could click there. That's 22.5. There should be a measurement at the other end there. So if I measure that with the tape measure tool, we've got there, that's 2.5, that's 2.5 meters. So we're out by half a meter. Let's start measuring from 3, that's 2 meters, that's 4 meters. Oh, that makes sense. That's all making sense to me now. So 10, okay, so we've imported this information, we've checked it, we know it's accurate. Now this has come in as a 2D symbol. It's a 2D symbol. We look at this in 2D, completely flat. What we need to do is to convert this. Now we can't use this information directly as it is, so we're going to go to AEC, no, modify, convert to group. Okay, now it's a group. Now I can ungroup it. So modify, ungroup. So what have I got? I've got another symbol inside here. Modify, convert to group. So I can go through doing this to get the information. What you will find often is that when you import a survey information, you end up with polylines. They might be 2D polylines, they might be 3D polylines, and they work really well. So that's one of the ways of doing it. When you import the DXF file, always check to make sure that you've got it at the correct scale. Once you've imported this information, if you ever give it to anybody, or if you go out to a site and you come back to work on it, you will assume that this information is correct. As soon as you import this information, check it and scale it so it's correct. What you might call calibrate. You need to make sure that you've calibrated your information, because if you ever give it to somebody and you forget to calibrate it, they will assume it's correct and they'll work on it. Now I did create some things and get them all ready for us. So here we are. So this is information I've created already. What's this here? It's a 2D polygon. So let's select all of those. Let's go and use AEC, and we'll use survey input, 2D polys to 3D source data. So where's the first one? We don't know. This is using, what are these? Are these polylines? No, it's polygons. It's a polyline. All of your polylines have to be converted. Polyline. These must be converted to polygons. Pretty sure. Let's have a look. Let's try that again. That's selecting something. The start elevation. I've forgotten what the start elevation was, so I need to look. Because here I've got some 3D objects here. This is a 3D, and that elevation 40 meters. So 2D contours. So this one should be at 40 meters. Now this is when we convert this has got 9 vertices. One of these in here has got hundreds, I think, 335. When I create my site model, I may not need all of those vertices. So one of the tricks I always do is to make sure that I use the modify, drafting aids, and simplify polys. Now the simplify polys command can dramatically reduce the time it takes to create a site model every time you edit it, because you can reduce the amount of data without getting any loss of visual effect or loss of what visually you see for the contours. So the maximum deviation is left and right. How much am I willing to accept left and right for the deviation from my current site model? Let's zoom in so we can see it more accurately. And we're going to do modify, drafting aids, simplify polys again. So let's say we're willing to accept an inch either side, because it's, we're doing a whole site plan. So 25 millimeters, remember this had 335 vertices. We go, okay. Now let's reduce that to 25. I didn't use 25 millimeters. Let's do that again. Modify, drafting aids, simplify polys. Let's do 25 millimeters because I'm using meters in this file. I was using millimeters in the other file. Okay, did anyone see a difference in that? Because the difference is really slight. It's just a very slight movement here. But I've lost 90% of my data points. Now that's a dramatic improvement in the speed at which it's going to create this site model. So one of the things you should really look for is making sure that you simplify these polys. It'll really speed up the way you create your data. And on polygons where you've got thousands of data points, this can be a real time saver. Also, if you've got a lack of memory in your computer, a lack of processing power in your computer, Vectorworks processing so much information, it can appear like Vectorworks has crashed, but it hasn't. Okay, so let's grab this. Of these ones here, these are all the same. These are polylines. Modify, convert to polygons. Okay, so that's a polygon. Let's have a look. What have we got here? That's a polygon, 26 data points, 13 vertices, 9. Okay, so if we select all of them, let's do that again, and modify, drafting aids, simplify polys. Then there's something other than polys. Down the bottom here, you can only simplify polys. So something here says it's not a polygon. It says I've got 14, so I should be able to do that again because it's removed all the ones that didn't need. Okay, so there must be something in here that's not a polygon. Maybe I should use this option, select all of those, they're all polygons. And we'll do that again. Cool. So now I've got my polygons. Now what I want to do is I want to lift these to the correct height. So let's select them, and we're going to use the survey input 2D polys to 3D source data. Now I can't tell which of those it's selected. We have no way of knowing. So this is 40. Going to create 3D data. Okay, so that's the first one there. We're going to work on that one. That was 40. We go next. Let's escape from that. Yes. No. So we've started here and we've got some put in and I don't like them. So let's get rid of those. I'm going to get rid of all of those, get rid of all of these. And we're going to start again. So select all of those, including you. And let's look at my survey source data. Now here, the interval, I had that as 1. That should be 1 meter. That's right, that's 1 meter. Segment length, created starting height 40. So let's start again. So that one should be 40, that's correct. This next one, oh, there we are. So that's 41, now it's showing correctly. 41, 42, 43. Now this one, you can see it's jumped around because of the way I created it. I should have created this one next. So this one should be, that was 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46. This should be 47. So I can go make that one 47. Go to the next one, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55. And this is 43, 44. And you can see what a hassle it is if you don't get these in order. 44, so that's 45, 46, 47, go up. I think I'm out. I think I've got the wrong ones here. I'm just going to carry on. So you can see wherever I had a vertex on my polygons, I've ended up with a 3D loci. So if you simplify those, then you won't get so many of these 3D loci. If we look at them in 3D, I think I've got some loci that are on the same elevation. Yeah, just in here, these two at the same elevation. I think I miscalculated that 49, and that one is 47. That one's 47. So all of these ones should have been 48 on that line there. Well, I'm just going to go ahead. It's just going to have a slight mistake. So now I need to select all that information. Click on one of these. Selects all of them together. Let's create our site model. We've got our settings here, so we can check our maximum, check our minimum, our minor contour interval 0.25 every 4. Don't forget to check the graphic properties. Make sure that they've got the correct classes assigned. My printer's just decided to clean itself today, right now. Apologies for the background noise. Okay, so don't forget to check your graphic properties. Now we haven't talked about site modifiers. I'm not sure we're going to get time to talk about site modifiers today, but we'll have a look at those one day. Maybe we should do a whole session just on that. Now I do cover that in my manual. If we have a look at the manual, we've covered that. I've gone through all of this, covered that. So you notice the images of the stuff that I'm using today. How to do the 3D stuff. Cool. All right. And then we look at reshaping the crop and stuff. Okay, so that's the manual. If you want it, don't forget to become part of the community. So those are my contour intervals. We got the 2D display. Yes, that's pretty similar. We got the 3D display. We're going to have the existing only, and I'm not putting a site modifier, so it won't make a difference. So okay with that. And there are my contours. Let's have a look at that. You can see the contours. So I go 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47. And that one should be 48. That should be 49. So I've miscounted these. And so as a result, I've ended up with the wrong information. So I can go back. Don't forget, I can go back and I can go recreate from source data. And I can get into there. And I can make changes to those contours and get them to the correct elevation. So we know that all of these need to be lifted up by about 1 meter. Now some can be difficult to use your selection tool in this mode, but we could use it in the lasso mode. And I can now lasso all of this area here. And then I can use a move 3D command. So modify, move 3D. All of this has to go up by 1 meter. Let's exit. And now you'll notice the contours are repaired. There they are. So 47, 48, 49, so on. Now if I had an outline of the site, let's say for example the site was this shape, and we had something to give us that shape. I could take that shape and I could recreate or edit my crop. So let's cut that, right click, and we're going to edit the crop. Now I use the paste and place a lot when I'm dealing with the site models, and because of that it means I can't move my site model, otherwise my paste and place can go out. So there it is there. Now there's an existing crop object here, I need to get rid of that. And when I exit my site model, you can see I've just shown the contours in the area that I wanted. Now I know a lot of people like to rotate these things. They like to grab hold of this tool. We're going to rotate it. We really want the contours up, straight up that way. Let's go and right click. We'll edit the crop, and you'll notice that it jumped back to its natural position. Let's edit the site model crop. There it is there. So if we go right click and edit the crop again, but the paste and place won't work. So let's say for example we've rotated the site. We now know that our house should follow that angle, so we cut that, we edit this, we go paste and place, and how is it? Oh, that's not bad, is it? Okay, and then we exit. Now why didn't it work? Let's go back and have a look. So we pasted this in place like we did last time, but it didn't work because we forgot to delete that polyline. So let's delete the polyline, let's exit that, and now we've got the shape we want. Okay, what else do we need to cover? We've covered how to create it, the crop. A major thing that I want, so I'm not going to talk too much about site modifiers, but I'm going to go back and edit my crop. Let's get rid of that shape there. We'll bring everything back. So one of the things I did that's really important about site modeling, I'm not going to cover it today, but one of the really important things is site modifiers. That's the ability to modify the site, and there is a whole bunch of site modifiers. It's this tool here, the site modifiers tool, and we can create areas that are going to be affected. We can create changes to the contours. We can put in flat areas. We can put in a pad with a retaining edge. We can have an aligned site modifier and so on. So there's a lot that can go on with that, and there's a whole lot of stuff that we could do, but we're not going to do it today. But one thing I wanted to talk about with that is we need to look at our site model settings. And here under our site model settings, we can choose what layers can affect my site. Now this is a whole discussion all on its own. This whole thing about which layers should I put my information in. There's a lot to it, because if you've got a house that's moving around a lot, it's not quite fixed on the site, you might move it left, might move it right. You might have to move it close to the boundary, further away from the boundary. If it's still fluid, if you put the site modifiers, if you allow the site modifiers to be on, for example, the floor layer, then as you move the information on the floor layer, you're also moving that site modifier, and so it can be a real advantage to do that. It depends on the project whether I choose one or the others. The same layer of site model means that you have to put the site modifiers on the same layer as the site model, otherwise it doesn't work. I often use this one, select layers, where you're saying I want to be able to put information on the floor layer, for example, and have that affect the site. If you're doing hard landscaping with the hardscape tool, or you're using the curve tool, then don't forget to include those as site modifier layers, otherwise they won't work. Well, I think I've covered just about everything I wanted to cover today in terms of building the site model. We've got 3D objects. So the other way we can build a site model is to use this. Let's just finish those off then. So there's two other things I wanted to do. Using stake objects to create your site model. These are all stake objects. Using 3D contours if you've got the 3D contour from the surveyor. So let's have a look at that. I'm just going to go back to that mode. We've got 16 3D polygons, so we can go AEC, terrain, site model from source data, and OK to that. And you can see it creates that information. We got stake objects as well. So we select all the stake objects. AEC. Site model from source data. There's my intervals. Contour interval 0.25 every 4. And OK to that. Now I have told you that I'm using classes to control information. And that should allow me to do, let's go site, contours existing minor. Now you notice now when I've turned them off, I've turned off my minor contours, which is, I think is really cool. Let's turn off the minor. Let's go back to our contours. And you can see I've lost all my minor contours here. And if I want them to see them again, I can turn them back on. So it should allow you to create your site models and then create your drawings from your site model and use the classes to control how visible they are. Particularly when I'm doing existing and proposed, I quite like turning off my existing minor contours. I just see the major contours for existing, but my proposed contours can show more information. Well, I think that's about it for today. It's slightly shorter than normal, but thank you for coming. Thank you for watching, and I really appreciate you being here. Now, I'm sorry I haven't gotten a chat going. I have no idea why, but if you want to leave a comment once it's posted, I'll answer your comments once they're posted. So let me know if you like that. Let me know if you've got a topic for next week, and we'll look at it then. Thanks for coming.